I'm so excited about my new book called He Called Her. If you haven't got a chance to get a copy, check it out. We got a special offer for you, and we want to set you up with some great information about women in ministry. But what does the Bible say about women? If I go to Acts chapter 9 and verse 36, it says at Joppa there was a certain disciple named Tabitha, which is translated Dorcas. This woman was of good works. This woman was full of good works and charitable deeds, which she did. The Bible has a very positive take on women, and it exalts the role of women. Tabitha was a very inspiring individual. When she died, the people rallied together and they got the Apostle Peter to come and pray for her, and God raised her from the dead. This woman was so valuable that the prayers of the people of God moved heaven and earth and reversed a life-altering condition called death and brought her back from the grave. The people wanted her with them. I find it funny that this story of Tabitha involves the Apostle Peter. In fact, I'm so inspired by Tabitha, I wrote a chapter, the last chapter of the book, is called, He Called Tabitha. I believe God's called women for a special purpose and has a place for them in ministry. They're not in a secondary role. They're not an afterthought in God's kingdom. They have a priority plan in God's kingdom. And I'd love to talk with you more about that. I have a DVD about all of that, and the book itself goes into so much more detail. So we want to set you up with that. Check the link, it's all there. But what I want to talk about is Peter, because Peter comes and prays for Tabitha and sees her raised from the dead. Now remember, Peter was a prejudiced man, and rightfully so, because as a Jew, he was supposed to be a defender of the descendants of Israel and was not to be socializing or pretending to be in close relationship with people who did not follow God, particularly through the writings of Moses. So God has to speak to him, give him this vision, and show him, look, you've got to let go of that, because now I have called the non-Jewish people clean as well, and I've called them to myself. And so Peter goes through this transition, and he goes and he preaches the gospel in the house of Cornelius, a Gentile, non-Jewish man, Italian man. He goes, preaches in his home, and the power of God comes down. The Spirit of God fills them. Peter sees this as they're all filled with the Spirit, and they're all speaking in tongues, and he realizes God did this just like he did for us on the day of Pentecost, and he says, wow, I can't hold something against them, that God's removed the restriction. They can come into the kingdom. I've got to invite them into the kingdom. So this is Peter that we're dealing with. And I don't think Peter just had something against people of a different race, but I think he also had something against women. One of Jesus' first miracles was he healed Peter's mother-in-law. If that didn't make a believer out of Peter, in a culture where women were subjugated, that Jesus would go and not only help a woman, but help his mother-in-law, that had to get his attention. But that's not why I'm saying Peter may have had a problem with women. You see, when he's out there warming himself by the fire, and Jesus is in there during his trial, and somebody comes up and questions him and says, weren't you one of those people from Galilee? Who is it? It's a woman. He swears at her that he doesn't know Jesus. Peter didn't quickly act very respectful toward her or the others. But that's not all. At the graveside, Mary comes back and tells the disciples that she's seen Jesus. And Peter goes, then he's risen. He's appeared to Mary. No, he has to go and see for himself. Now, many times we fault Thomas for saying, well, I've got to see it for myself before I believe it. But Peter did not trust her words. They did not believe the words of the women. Luke chapter 24 and verse 10, it was Mary Magdalene, Joanna, Mary the mother of James, and the other women with them who told these things to apostles. And their words seemed to them like idle tales, and they did not believe them. But Peter arose and ran to the tomb. So I'm not saying it was just Peter, but these men didn't believe the women. When you've got three women who say they saw the same thing, you would think you would believe it. But I'm thinking there was still just a little bit of cultural overlap in their faith, and they looked at the women questioningly, as in, can we trust them? Do we believe what a woman says? And so here, Peter has to hear about Jesus' resurrection from the mouth of a woman. That had to have been challenging for his male pride. His male ego is damaged because he also takes instructions from these women who tell them where to go and meet Jesus. But later we see that he is caring and compassionate toward this woman, Tabitha. Interesting take. Today, our challenges, I don't think, are much different than they had been many years ago. There's always been a challenge. In fact, the Bible tells us this in Genesis. I make this point in the book as well, that from the beginning there was this conflict between the man and the woman. God didn't create opposite sex. He created two genders that were complementary to one another. And what did we do? We made it oppose one another. We made opposite sex so that the one is in opposition to the other. God didn't design us in conflict. He designed us in unity. He designed us to work together. But men and women have been in conflict far too long. And it's time we get it right. This book, He Called Her, talks about women in ministry, goes into depth on these topics. Should a woman be silent in the church? Can a woman pastor? Can a woman have authority over men? What about this verse? People ask. That's why I want you to read this book. I can't go at all into it in this little YouTube clip, but you can learn a whole lot in this book and on my DVD series. And we want to encourage you to understand the Word of God as it relates to women, men, and the faith. So check out those links down in the description. Click on the banner, and we'll catch you over there.